Long before Samson was even a thought, the people of Israel were living under the oppressive rule of the Philistines. For 40 long years, they faced hardship and suffering, their spirits weary from the constant struggle. It was a time of great need, a time when a hero was desperately wanted. But heroes don't always appear in shining armor on a battlefield. Sometimes they begin with a quiet promise, a whisper of hope in a world that has grown dark. In the small, sun-drenched village of Zorah, a divine plan was about to unfold. It started not with a king or a warrior, but with a humble, childless couple who had all but given up hope of ever having a family. One ordinary day, as the woman, Manoah's wife, went about her duties, she was visited by a figure bathed in a heavenly light. It was an angel of the Lord. The angel brought a message that would change not only her life, but the course of her entire nation. He told her, "You will conceive and give birth to a son." This was miracle enough, but there was more. This child was to be special, set apart for a sacred purpose from the moment of his birth. He was to be a Nazirite, a person consecrated to God. This meant he must never drink wine or any fermented drink, never eat anything unclean, and most importantly, a razor was never to touch his head. His long, uncut hair would be a visible symbol of his vow and the source of a power unlike any the world had seen. He would be the one to begin the deliverance of Israel from the hands of the Philistines. True to the angel's word, a son was born, and they named him Samson. As he grew from a boy into a young man, it became clear he was no ordinary child. The Spirit of the Lord was with him, blessing him with a strength that defied all explanation. Stories began to spread through the villages. People would whisper about how young Samson could lift objects that grown men struggled with, how he possessed a power that seemed to come directly from heaven. His strength wasn't just physical. It was a divine gift, a sign of the incredible destiny that awaited him. The Lord was preparing his champion, forging him into a weapon against the enemies of Israel. One day, as Samson was traveling, a young lion, fierce and roaring, suddenly leaped out at him. For any other person, this would have been a terrifying, life-ending encounter. But Samson was not just any person. Filled with the power of the Lord, he faced the beast without a shred of fear. In a breathtaking display of his God-given might, he grabbed the lion and tore it apart with his bare hands as easily as if it were a young goat. He didn't even have a weapon. This was the first true test of his extraordinary abilities, a confirmation that the power within him was real and truly unmatched. He continued on his way, the incredible event a secret known only to him and to God. As Samson grew into manhood, his reputation spread like wildfire. The Philistines, the very people he was destined to challenge, began to hear tales of this impossibly strong Israelite. They saw him not as a man, but as a threat, a one-man army who could single-handedly dismantle their control. They laid trap after trap for him, using cunning, deceit, and overwhelming numbers. But every single time Samson broke free. He snapped new ropes as if they were singed threads. He once took the jawbone of a donkey and, with that simple, crude weapon, struck down 1,000 Philistine soldiers. He even carried the massive gates of a Philistine city, gateposts and all, to the top of a hill. The Philistines feared him, they hated him, and they became obsessed with discovering the source of his incredible power. But for all his divine strength, Samson had a very human weakness. It wasn't a sword, a spear, or an army that could bring him down. It was his own heart, his own desires. He fell in love with a woman from the valley of Sorek, a Philistine woman named Delilah. His love for her was deep and passionate, but it was also dangerous. The Philistine rulers saw this as their golden opportunity. They approached Delilah, offering her a fortune in silver if she could uncover the secret to Samson's strength. They knew that if they could learn his secret, they could finally overpower him. Delilah, tempted by the immense wealth, agreed to betray the man who loved her. Night after night, Delilah pleaded with Samson. "Tell me the secret of your great strength," she'd ask, "and how you can be tied up and subdued." 3 times, Samson lied to her. First, he said he'd be weak as any other man if tied with 7 fresh bowstrings. The Philistines tried it while he slept, but he snapped them instantly. Next, he told her new ropes would do the trick. Again, they failed. Then he suggested weaving the 7 braids of his hair into the fabric on a loom. That too was useless. He simply pulled the entire loom from the ground when he awoke. But Delilah was relentless. She wore him down with her constant nagging, claiming he didn't truly love her if he wouldn't share his deepest secret. Finally, exhausted and heartbroken, Samson gave in. He confessed everything. He told her about his Nazirite vow, that his strength came from God and was tied to his uncut hair. If his head were shaved, he would become as weak as any other man. With the secret revealed, Samson's fate was sealed. While he slept with his head on Delilah's lap, she called in a man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair. As the last lock fell to the floor, the Spirit of the Lord left him. His divine strength vanished in an instant. When the Philistines rushed in, Samson awoke, thinking he could escape as he had before. But this time it was different. He was just an ordinary man. The Philistines seized him, overpowered him easily, and in a final act of cruel victory, they gouged out his eyes. The mighty hero, the champion of Israel, was now a blind, powerless prisoner. They'd bound him in bronze shackles and forced him to grind grain in the prison, a symbol of his complete and utter defeat. But in the darkness of that prison, a flicker of hope began to emerge. The Philistines, in their arrogance, overlooked one small detail. Samson's hair, the symbol of his vow and the conduit of his strength, began to grow again. Day by day, week by week, as he toiled in darkness, his hair slowly lengthened. It was a quiet, almost unnoticeable change. But it signified that God had not entirely abandoned him. God's plan was not yet complete. Samson's downfall came from his disobedience, but God's grace offered a path to redemption, even in the depths of despair. The Philistines decided to hold a great festival to celebrate their victory and offer a sacrifice to their god, Dagon, for delivering Samson into their hands. Thousands of them packed into their massive temple, rulers and common people alike, all there to revel in their enemy's humiliation. They called for Samson to be brought out so they could mock him. The blind, broken hero was led into the temple and placed between the 2 central pillars that supported the entire structure. Standing there, hearing the jeers and laughter of his enemies, Samson prayed a final, desperate prayer. He reached out his hands, one on each pillar, and cried out, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just one more time." It was not a prayer for escape, but for one last act of divine purpose. In that moment, God answered. A surge of power, greater than any he had ever known, flooded through Samson's body. He braced himself, his muscles tensing, and with a final earth-shattering roar, he pushed against the pillars with all his might. The massive stone columns groaned, cracked, and then gave way. The entire temple roof came crashing down, a catastrophic collapse that buried everyone inside, the rulers, the people, and Samson himself. In this final, sacrificial act, Samson achieved his greatest victory. The Bible says he defeated more Philistines in his death than he had in his entire life. His story is a powerful and complex one. It's a tale of incredible strength and profound weakness, of divine calling and human failure. But above all, it's a testament to the fact that God's grace is bigger than our mistakes. God can use anyone, even a flawed hero, to accomplish his incredible purpose. Samson's legacy is a reminder that our true strength doesn't come from ourselves, but from placing our trust in God, who can bring victory even out of our darkest moments. Thanks for watching. If you were inspired by this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more illustrated Bible stories.